Mary Gilbert Walk her parents owned that house, and she's the same age as me, and he's recording this. So I would go over to Shirley's house because she loved to dance, and we all went to St. John's School, and so I can still see her on the stage on the second floor in the school dancing to, oh, what was the song? Da, 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 da. I've got eyes of blue. What's that song, Ann?
That's all right.
That's my weakness now. And she was dancing to that. She loved to dance. When she got older, she married directly out of high school. We graduated, and she got married to Gilbert Walk, who was actually Winston Moeller's brother-in-law. Now, you know Winston.
I know, he was my first interview, oral history interview. It was so great to meet him.
And
in the same place, too. They reside in the same complex.
He was the same age as me. Mm-hmm. Very same age, and Gordy Martin, whose son lives over here now.
Gotcha.
In the old Martin house. So, anyway.
This is Edward Moll's place here.
Place that Lee and Randy bought from Shirley Mall Walk.
Okay.
So they have lived there, what did Lee say, 30 years? 1993.
Wow.
To 19, this is 24, so 24. 31 years, yeah. Mm. And it's beautiful inside. And Lee's dad, Edwin Schroeder from Gretwick, did all that fretwork on the house now.
Oh, I see.
By hand. I remember when he did that.
Must be related to Don Schroeder, right?
Well, that was Lee's father that did it.
Oh, okay.
Not Shirley's relation.
Sure.
But then Shirley ended up going with Burkle's German band. And she was one of the dancers and one of the singers. She sang with them. Remember when you guys took me up to the Buffalo German place for my 91st birthday?
Yeah.
And the Burkle's band was playing. Mm-hmm. So they played up there. And if Shirley were still living, but she died quite young. When I say young, probably in her 70s. And Gilly, her husband, died much earlier. But and then Rudolph, I was telling them today, Rudolph Mall was a farmhouse. And you have a picture of that on.
That's Rudolph Mall?
That was Rudolph. And he lived with his mother. He was never married. But now this, you will know the name Larry Helwig. Okay.
Certainly.
Larry's mother, Barbara, was a friend of mine because we were the same age and we graduated from high school together. And Barbara's maiden name was Thompson. And on the corner of Oliver Street and Felton, not East Felton, Felton Street, there was Thompson's Bowling Alley. And there's a garage there in the corner, but the Thompson Bowling Alley with a bar in the front. Rudolph would hang out at that bar. So Barb was the daughter there, and she got to know Rudolph. Rudy, we called him Rudy. So Rudy, then when his mother died, said, "Oh, you like antiques, Barb?" Barb did. She was by then married to Ronnie Helwig, and Larry was her oldest child. And so Barb got a lot of the antiques.
Just by virtue. Yeah.
Now, I don't know if Larry's aware of that or if you've talked to Larry about it.
Not a whole lot.
Well, you know.
Not along a lot of people's, well, you know.
Yeah. I've been in Larry's house years ago when Barb was still living, and I don't remember that I even looked. But Larry is such a nice guy and so forth.
Very upstanding man. Yeah, very active.
He used to put signs, look for Larry Howie on a
Well, you know.
lawn on
Well,
Shawnee
sure.
Road and so forth. But that's a story I wanted to tell you about those two
No,
houses.
sure. And the farmhouse that sat right here at the town hall campus, people up and down the street, a couple of them who remembered before town hall was
Yeah.
constructed here in 1973, 72, they said, "Oh, we used to call that the haunted house," you know. And,
Yeah, because
you
it was
know,
old, yeah.
yeah, it was
It
like
was
sliding
old and-
away.
Yeah, in Mrs. Small, I remember seeing her, but I don't think I ever really knew her. But she must have been quite elderly. But the people on this road, Artis, was Artis Hasley. She grew up on the boulevard before she married Wolf, W-O-L-F. They lived in that first house. That corner house wasn't there where the priest lives.
Way over there. Oh, over here.
Yeah.
Right. Ah,
I don't think that house is there. I think he built that,
Mhm.
brand new.
right.
But going down Church Road, the next house, I don't know if that was ever anything there, but then Harold Mall, you know where Greg Martin lives?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah. Yep.
that's where Gordy built a little home for himself, Gordy Martin,
Mm-hmm.
after Sharon and him divorced. And the next house is Harold Mall, M-O-L-L. I don't think they were any relation. They came from Buffalo, because Joyce Mall, red on the head, and I were two peas in a pod. Yeah. And Joyce had an older sister, June, who married a Millville that ran the dairy in LaSalle,
Mm-hmm.
and their son became the Lutheran pastor in Clarence Center when that plane crash was. He was still there. And then she also had June and Herb Millville had another son, but I don't remember anything about that. But then there was June, the oldest in the Mall family, and then there was Joyce, and then there was Doris, who married Gordy Schumacher from Growick, and then there was Leonard and Harold Jr., Harold Jr. And Harold Jr. they're all deceased now. Leonard had died too, but that was the Mall house. And I think Leonard's wife still lives there.
Yeah, I posted about that house, the other one. I
Oh,
call it
did
the
you?
other Mall house on
Okay.
Church Road. There's the older one
Okay.
here, and then there's the around 1900 or so built house over
Okay,
here.
because when we were kids, they even had an ice box. And they used to get ice delivered from Schnittger's. I remember that. We remember the Schnittger's from Pendleton, remember? And anyway, Joyce's mother, Harold's wife, Agnes Mall, was the nicest lady.
Mm-hmm.
But Harold Mall, the father, was stern Lutheran. You don't play cards on Sunday, you don't drink on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the old German
Absolutely,
thumbs
sure.
down.
They remember the Sabbath and respect
Yes.
respect the blue laws.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think he was a little shady on the side.
As an aside.
He was very strict.
Right.
He
right.
was very strict. And Joyce was kind of wild. Well, you're not, I know you're recording this, but you're not gonna publish it.
No, this is just for the record. No.
This is how I remember it, really.
And-
Joyce became a nurse, a very good nurse, but she would go to Buffalo. And she'd come home on Sundays, honest to goodness, and sometimes she'd wear long gloves. And she'd buy clothes, she would tell us, she would buy clothes at the department stores, wear them for the weekend and take them back on.
Oh, that's
And my-
tacky. That is so tacky. Remember Dame Maggie Smith, you know, when she was younger, that murder, but that, yeah, I love that line. Oh, that's tacky.
We would just laugh and say, Miss Joyce, right on the head. Yeah, she did a few other things too that was quite risque. But, you know, it's like they let her loose. That's the way I felt. We felt, Claire Persky and I and Lois and Jackie Rogers, whose son is Mark Rogers. From, I don't know if you know Mark.
I don't remember. No.
No, okay. Well, he's
Yeah,
from
it does ring a
Tulsa.
bell, but I'm sure.
Yeah, like Donna, what's Donna's last name? Persky. She was Donna Persky. She's the one that designed that town of Wheatfield.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yes,
Donna
absolutely.
House.
Yes,
House,
absolutely. Yeah,
Donna
yeah, yeah.
House. Yeah, she designed
Let's
that.
see what the audience needs to know here. You know, the town seal, and it's a great bit of women's history in the area as well, because she developed that seal with Stanley Brzezinski when he was supervisor, and the town hall itself had only been a year or so old, and then she won the contest as a designer, and we have the seal of the town today, which is actually one of the nicest municipal town seals and flags, really, of anybody, actually. It's one of my favorite designs.
And I don't want this recorded, what I'm going to say now, okay?
I'll edit it out.
Okay, because Stan Brzezinski was my oldest sister's boyfriend
Oh, okay.
when they were in high school. But my father, too, is Lutheran pastor, older, as Dorothy used to say, hell and brimstone is what he preached. And I was young. Dorothy was 10 years older than I was. But Dorothy and Stanley, who was Catholic and Polish,
Oh, indeed.
that was a no-no. And Dorothy was not even allowed to date a guy from Sanborn who was not Missouri Synod.
Sure.
He was Elka.
Sure.
So, you know, these are the ways some of the people were years ago.
Oh, indeed. Oh, indeed.
But Stanley was the nicest guy, and Dorothy could not stay with him.
Mm-hmm.
And they went together quite a while. Yeah. But it's interesting how he became the supervisor. Yeah.
And when you were younger, you were born and raised where?
I was born in Indiana
Ah, okay.
because my father had a parish at a church, we call it, in Mills. Millstadt is where my mother was from, Millstadt, Illinois.
Gar Creek.
Gar Creek. Ann took me there a couple of years back. And it's a beautiful little church there. But the town was Gar Creek, and there were probably 50 people. And then my father retired and came up here because his mother was from Ward Road.
Oh, okay.
But she lived in that house on the boulevard next door to the town hall, between the town hall and Lemke's. Like
right.
Did you read my email to you, that long email I sent you?
Oh.
See, he doesn't read
She
emails.
sent me a few. So
Okay.
in total.
Where do you work? The zoo?
I used to work at the Buffalo Zoo as a switchboard operator there. I work at Lewiston Porter Schools these days, full
okay.
time. So it's
Okay.
yeah, and
Okay.
and you're talking between here and Lemke. Are you talking about one of the older houses in between?
The one that used to have all the gingerbread trim on
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, on Niagara Falls.
The Zimmendorf.
Yeah, the Zimmendorf house,
Yeah.
indeed, absolutely, sure.
But-
That's what we were talking about before, and I definitely wanted to get to that.
Yeah.
Well, there's several Zimmendorf houses. Oh, that's
Oh, yes.
yours.
Yeah.
And then there's the one up the road, up Ward Road, the larger house, the larger farmhouse we talked about.
Bear with me.
No,
I did bring you some things. And you may have these. This is Supervisor Ed Granite.
yeah, sure.
And Ed, of course, was well known. But
Right.
he was a great guy, grew up on Ward Road, and I knew his parents and everybody. But these are the things that he sent out for 3 different Christmases, and they're all
Oh, goodness.
poems that he wrote. And they're
Huh.
beautiful poems.
Oh, see,
And I thought you had one here.
oh.
That I thought I
Wow.
had given you that one year.
Yeah, there was
You
a
may
poem.
let the girls read them if you want. Where'd Nancy, is she on the phone?
Yeah, I was aware of the one that he wrote for our our sesquicentennial, our 150th anniversary year, 1986, and I do have that poem celebrating that, but I never knew he actually did even more.
Yeah, this is the young Edward Greiner.
Huh.
His father was
Senior.
The senior. He was the one that owned the restaurant on the boulevard at the corner of Maple and the boulevard.
Oh. Yes. Okay.
Ed
Right
Senior?
over there. Yes, over there. Yeah.
Because
At
my mother worked there too after my father died. What was the name of
Teddy's.
Teddy's?
Teddy's Rest. I was
Teddy's
just gonna
restaurant.
say.
He didn't own it. He ran it.
Mm-hmm.
His brother owned it, Ted Theodore Greiner.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother lived in that corner house it was Church Road.
The house still standing today.
The house still standing. Yes, Teddy lived there, but Eddie ran the restaurant. And Eddie also, the father, had the large home on Ward Road that always had Uncle Sam mailbox with red, white, and blue Uncle Sam. And the mailbox was held by his hands, more or less. Everybody knew where Eddie Greiner Sr. lived because of that. But that's, I
Yeah.
wanted to show you
And
that.
he was supervisor of the town once too, I believe, right?
I don't
Senior.
remember that.
Yeah, I think it's on the list. I'm not sure. There are 2 Ed Grainers, the older Ed Grainers and the
Okay,
newer.
this is Nancy.
Hello.
Hi,
Nice
how
to
are
meet
you?
you. Hi,
Good to
nice
see
to
you.
meet
Good to see you as well. I do have, okay, you got a stool there at least. Okay.
Oh, you got a chair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Talking about the Zimmendorf's home
Yeah.
on Ward Road.
Further up, yeah.
This was in the Buffalo News, 1982.
Ah,
And it was the homestead where they have now built probably 125
Oh, yeah.
homes.
right. They filled that whole
Yes.
space,
And
yeah.
this was the house that was there.
Ah, oh,
And it
excellent.
was-
Set way back, isn't it?
Yes.
That other house was
Yes.
set way back. Okay.
And when I read this,
Oh my God.
they talked about the pond. Well, Lloyd Zimmendorf, who is still living, I'm 92, and Lloyd turned 90, I was at his party, maybe a year ago.
Huh.
And the pond in the back of the house that was mentioned here, Lloyd and I used to ice skate on it. And they had big barns there too because they were a dairy farm. But then they had a fire. And Lloyd said all the antiques that they had in that barn, they were all burned.
Oh
Where
boy.
Aunt Minnie lived?
Aunt Minnie lived on the boulevard here.
What am I thinking? There was
When
a house way in the back, way back.
Well,
on Ward
that's
Road.
that house.
Okay.
When Aunt Minnie couldn't live alone anymore, they moved her into Raynard and Lloyd's, Bill was Lloyd's oldest brother. Lloyd was the youngest in the family, just like I was. And all his siblings were much older. So you can have that. I have no use for
Well,
it.
thank you so much. I really
And
appreciate it.
Lloyd, that would have been where Lloyd Zimmendorf, who now lives on Cy Road, and is remarried. His first wife died, but that would have been his house. I remember being there in the
Wow.
living room, and my father and Lloyd's father would argue politics back then. Oh my God. And Lloyd and I would go to the kitchen there, and we would play hide the button, and we would take and mix different mixtures, iodine and, maybe Crisco or whatever. We would just see what we would come up with.
That's
And
fun.
That's what kids did for activities back then. So,
Well, me and my sister would reenact the supermarket sweep game show. We take all those coupons that when Tops used to have those automated coupon things, they spit out coupons. Yeah, there's little red machines, or take one, and we take one from several different things, pretend they were money, and hide them between different things in the kitchen, and we pretend to like rush around and get things for prizes and all that.
Yeah, you know, you do.
Well, our games are weird.
Well, and it's entertainment.
Absolutely. It
And
was
today
great.
they sit with their phones in front of them, and do they learn? I don't know.
Not necessarily. I
I
mean,
don't
some
know.
do, some don't. It just depends. But I like using technology as tools, not in place of a person. You know, as Scott Galloway said, there's never been with I guess with exceptions, there's never been a time when someone had a wonderful experience on a phone. Yeah. You gotta live life. You gotta live life.
And I do believe that I have already given you these pictures because I had
I think
captions
so.
a few years ago. I had made captions. And I think I gave it all to you.
I will.
And-
Yes, I think so.
Yes, and when that
Yes.
house there, in that article, it says that there were probably 140 acres that were given to the Zimmendorf. It would be my great-grandfather or something.
Yeah.
And it said they split 70 acres for that, and the rest were given to the brother. Well, this is the house that my father was born in, and my grandmother lived in, and that is just south of where they built all the new homes now. There's a creek between where those homes are coming this way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that house, and the other side of the creek is this house. And this is
Great.
two pictures of this house. This one has the shutters. This one is summer when they didn't have the shutters.
Oh, that's right. Okay, because they would have removed those. For the,
Yes. But that was the Zimmendorf house. My grandmother lived there. I was
her
born,
name?
I don't,
Wilhelmina?
the one that lived with us, Albertina.
Albertina.
That main
one? Albertina Williams.
Williams. My grandfather Zimmendorf married Albertina Williams. And that's Albertina Williams, who married Christian Zimmendorf. That is my father.
Philip.
That is his brother, the one that, Alfred, who was lost for many years. That is Theodore Zimmendorf, whose grandson still, Carl Zimmendorf, lives in North Ridge, Ransomville. And this is George Zimmendorf. Philip and George both became Lutheran pastors. George died a very young age, but he was a pastor. Somewhere in here, I have a letter that he wrote when he was in Long Island, I think it was, where he was trying to establish a church or something. It's in here. Yes, Alfred Zimmendorf married a woman from Michigan, Aunt Louise, and then had two children, Evelyn and Edward. And he disappeared. He left. Nobody knew where he was. So she ended up remarrying his cousin, a Williams.
Okay.
And then her son Roger became Williams. So Eddie, the oldest child of Louise, Aunt Louise, changed his name to Williams without any, what would you
Legal.
say,
It wasn't
legal
legal.
aspect to it. So there's a relation around here, yeah, Eddie Williams and so forth. And in fact, Judy lives by me.
And how'd
Yeah.
you come to live in the house? You lived in the one on the boat?
Here,
right? Yeah.
because this woman and her husband, my grandmother and my grandfather, because he built this house, the other side of Kroll's, when
Right,
Kroll's
right over
was
there. right
Yeah,
there.
he built that house.
I see.
My grandmother lived there. My father retired in Indiana. Oh, Philip, you should come home. You live with me. So we moved up here because that's where he was from. She spoke high,
German.
Low German. My mother spoke High German in Millstadt, Illinois, which is a different dialect entirely.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she didn't really like my mother, but that's where we lived. And then my father died, so it ended up that she finally died too. She was old. I think I get my longevity from her. And then my mother had the house, and then my brother, who owned Creekside, he ended up with the house because when I was married and had Ann and Nancy. And then my mother died when Nancy was 1 year old, and she's 62, so my mother died 61 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I was quite young at that time when my mother died. And my other sister, Ruth, also had Kathy at the same time, so here we are with two.
Wow.
It was hard, it was kind of hard.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
what else? This was a picture, I think I had given this to you with
Yeah.
that caption too.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, because that was the lemonade stand or whatever. I looked
Yeah.
that up on Google,
Wow.
and there was an Orange Crush. Is that what it is?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there was a pop that was popular for a few years. Yeah, you can pass it around.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it was
I even
Orange
brought a
Delight. That was
magnifying.
Yeah,
Orange
orange,
Delight.
yeah.
I brought a magnifying glass if you want to look at it.
That's what you can use for your cell phone, is take a
Right.
picture and enlarge it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Really?
So you
Oh,
said
sure.
that people used to stop by, they were traveling to Niagara
Yeah.
Falls and they needed a place to stay, and they would just knock on the door and ask if they could stay.
That was
with the
when I
family,
was
right?
young. That's before I was even born. But yes, like before, maybe the war started 1941, and I was 9, because I was born in 1932. So before the war, I was probably about 7 when these people stopped by, and Aunt Minnie Zimmendorf lived where, it wasn't Chabelles, it's Rosani, where Rosani has the tools, the big barn with all the backhoes and stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That was my Aunt Minnie's place. And she took in roomers all the time. That's how she eked a living, by renting her rooms out.
Yeah.
And people would stay there for months at a time. Walter Williams, for one, I remember him. And then in the summertime, there were no cabins. Devonshires, yes, Devonshires had a lot of cabins. But when they would get filled up, they would say, oh, try that house over there. They might be able to keep you overnight. And they did. We did. They would send them to us. Sure, my mother would put them up. And that's the way people traveled in those days, just by knocking on doors.
And busking and so forth.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, if you don't behave, I'll give you to the rag man. We had rag men. Rags. Your parents probably remember that too. Your mother especially, I think, did. And her mother was from Nebraska, but country people.
Right,
That's
right.
what they did.
And the ragman
And-
has something of a reputation yet.
Well,
around here. It's
you
like,
know, we
it
just
sounded
knew-
like something out of a,
They would,
film or something.
they would just travel and pick
Sure.
up all the debris, all the junk. So what they did,
Right.
we don't know. But they also had.
It would be the pickers of their time, essentially. The people
Probably,
who bounced
yeah.
around just picking at things.
Yes.
Just these somewhat strange people, maybe, who
Yeah.
kind of went around and
But
just
we
picked
didn't
things
know
up to sell
one
or sell
time-
or something.
And we never locked our doors.
Yeah.
And one time my mother said, "Oh my God," I woke up. I'm sure she didn't say, "Oh my God," but she says, "Oh my God," I got up and there was a drunk laying on my sofa. And he just walked in and, oh yeah, yeah. And he left again when she woke him up. But we lived on the boulevard.
Right, sure.
And it's like, the saloon was over here.
Because Kroll's was right there, and you got Town Hall
I
in
don't know
between.
if it was Kroll's, well, it could have been
Oh,
Kroll's,
no.
but it could have been what we knew as what, the Mad Hatters, and they had many different names, Janet's and, well, that
Oh, that's
Janet-
across, oh, the other one across
Yes.
the street, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
across
okay,
the
yes.
bridge.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it used to be Moeller's General Store, and then became the Wishing
Yeah.
Well, and Villa
Used to be a general
Villa
store?
Capri, yeah, way long ago. In fact, the building actually probably dates back to more like late 1860s or so, because at the time the synod split in the Lutheran churches, this church here, the original St. John's Church, was locked up. And so the parishioners had to actually use that building to worship in. And so the remaining, there's a third of it or so that survives within the current Solidays over there. It's been closed now, but I say current Solidays, and it's because that's what's on the sign out there. And there's a portion of it that still survives there, that still stands in the basements down there and so forth. But it's actually one of the oldest buildings in town.
Really?
A part of it right there,
Wow.
the closest to Ward Road, that's where the windows are, that's where the entrance was. Actually, going further back was where the horses were stabled, and there were other buildings on the property, and there was also a house further down on the parking lot that eventually, by I think the 60s or something, 70s, blew up on the spot. And 2 pets were killed, and no one was home, but people who had something to do with that business owned it. They originally were living in that house, I'm told, until that time. And they just flattened it, and they just extended
Which
the
house?
parking lot, and that was it.
Which house was that?
This was a house that used to stand where the parking lot for the Janiks was. And there was a
Oh.
house down that way
That was Wolkowski's.
yeah.
Yeah, it was Wolkowski, because Leonard Wolkowski was in the army. Because from our house, it was like across the street.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my sister Dorothy knew Leonard Wolkowski because he had been in the service. Dorothy, being 10 years older, was 19 when the war started. So she ended up being a nurse's aide. She had a uniform, a blue uniform, and a nurse's cap, and she volunteered, although she worked at Buffalo Bolt. But she also did work for the Army, and then she married Malin, who was in the Army too. But yeah, the war, the war, I remember every time that a guy was killed from Johnsburg, oh my God.
What, the church did ring the bell?